Welcome to the Crunch Time YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be doing my first mock draft of the 2022 NFL draft season, and let's get right into it. So the Jacksonville Jaguars, they're picking first overall again. Last year they took Trevor Lawrence, and this year I think it's time they address their defense as they gave Lawrence quite a few resources in the free agency period of the offseason. They gave Christian Kirk a huge deal. I know they brought in Brandon Sheriff. So they've been making a few moves to help Trevor Lawrence. And now I think it's time to give this defense a few tools. And I have them taking Aiden Hutchinson out of Michigan. Between him and Thibodeau, you can't really go wrong. Both of them are elite prospects, number 1 and 2 edge rushers in this year's class. And it's really just up to them who they think is better. Now, I know Evan Neal is regarded as the number 1 tackle in this year's class, and I agree with that. I just don't think that Hutchinson or Thibodeau is someone who you would let slide and just take Evan Neal instead. I think you need to take a premier edge rusher if you're Jacksonville right now. Just help that defense, give him a few players, because right now the defense is severely lacking in star power compared to the offense, which is not great themselves. But just give the defense someone. And the Lions end up taking Thibodeau. I think that they're 1 and 2 in this year's class. You can switch it either way. I think Thibodeau ends up going 1 or 2, and Hutchinson goes 1 or 2 as well. So now the Texans are on the clock. I have them going with the number 1 tackle in this year's class, Evan Neal. Now, Evan Neal is not as great as some of the other elite tackle prospects we've seen in previous years, in my opinion, but he is still probably he is a top 3 prospect in this year's draft, along with the other 2 players who were previously chosen. And I think the Texans can't go wrong picking Evan Neal. Need another tackle. They have Laramie Tunsil already. Get someone else alongside him on the offensive line, and just make your team as favorable for a potential quarterback next year. I know people are pretty high on Davis Mills, but I just don't see him succeeding long term for Houston. And looking at how strong the AFC is, I don't think a quarterback like Davis Mills is ever going to help you win a Super Bowl. Now the Jets are on the clock, and the top prospects right here are cornerback and tackle. Now, I really like the Jets' tackle situation compared to their secondary. So now it's really between which cornerback to take between Sauce Gardner or Derek Stingley. A lot of people have them taking Sauce Gardner in this pick, but I disagree with that. I think Derek Stingley is the way to go. I think he's the number 1 corner this year's class, and just don't mess up on that pick. Just hope the injury issues are not long term. I know he had a bad ankle, but hopefully he'll be able to get bounce back when he gets to the league, and he can be a premier corner for you. Now the Giants are on the clock, and they say they're committed to Daniel Jones, so they won't be taking a quarterback. Not like I think any of these quarterbacks would succeed in New York anyway, but I have them taking Ikemi Kwanu, tackle out of North Carolina State. Now, they just need to give Daniel Jones offensive line help because they have pretty solid weapons, if we're being honest, for him to throw to. But that offensive line is horrendous. Now, Ikemi Kwanu should be a pretty good tackle for them year 1. Don't know how much he's going to help Daniel Jones himself, but for whatever quarterback they have in the future, they'll be very happy to have him on the line. Now, the Carolina Panthers are on the clock. Similar situation, except they're not as committed to Sam Darnold, reasonably so. He played pretty bad last year. Now, I don't think I'm going to have them taking Malik Willis or Kenny Pickett or just a quarterback in general at pick 6 because it just doesn't make sense. If you plug in a quarterback in Carolina, they're not going to succeed. Carolina is not a quarterback away from competing, and you're just going to end up busting with whoever you take. Maybe Kenny Pickett could do decent as he's the most pro ready of this group, but it seems kind of pointless to me. Let's just take the certified tackle in Charles Cross. He is the 3rd best tackle, I think, in this class, and you get him at the 6th pick. No need to complain about that. Just boost the offensive line, and maybe you'll be able to draft a CJ Stroud or Bryce Young next year. Who knows? Now New York is on the clock again, and it's a little more complicated here. We could end up going offensive line again, but I think that's a little redundant because just looking here, I don't think any of these guys are worth a top 10 pick. And I think just address defense, and you can take a prospect like a Kyle Hamilton, who is probably one of the best prospects in this year's draft. It's just that at safety, the positional value isn't as high as like tackle or edge. So I think this is a good spot for him to go number 7 to New York. And now they have a player they can move around as they lost Jabril Peppers to New England, so maybe they'll be able to use a Kyle Hamilton there. Now, the Falcons here at the 8th pick. This team is probably going to be the worst in the league next year. Um, I think they're probably worse than the Houston Texans, and that is saying a lot. Just take best player available here if you're the Falcons, and just looking at the players available, the best player available is Ahmad Gardner. I think that they have a few good pieces on their team in AJ Terrell, Grady Jarrett. Offensive line is pretty decent, but other than that, it is just atrocious for the Falcons. And you're just banking on drafting well this year, drafting well next year, hopefully getting a few free agents next year, because it is going to be a rough year for Falcons fans in 2022 to 2023 season. So now the Seahawks are picking, and this is the main pick they got for Russell Wilson, and they cannot mess this up. But if we're looking here, there is not a player here I really want to take. Maybe a wide receiver, but I think they just trade back here and reassess the board. Now, who would want to trade up? I'm going to say Philadelphia. Now, Philadelphia has 3 first round picks here. I've been trading pick 15 for number 9. Now, they'll probably have to give up a third round pick and maybe a pick next year. I believe 83 should be a third round pick. So, a third round pick and like a fifth next year. And this should go through, and it does. So now, the Eagles are on the clock here, pick 9. I just don't think if a board falls that way, Seattle should just reach for someone. That's the main pick you got for Russell Wilson. You have to be smart with who you pick. And Philadelphia's trading up. They're jumping ahead of a few wide receiver needy teams in the Jets, Washington football team, Baltimore's back there. And you're taking Garrett Wilson here. I think Garrett Wilson is the number 1 wide receiver in this year's class. And Philadelphia has an ample amount of picks. Might as well jump up ahead of some of these teams and take him. Now, that puts the Jets in a situation where they lose probably the wide receiver they had an eye on. And I think they end up taking Drake London here out of USC. As they need a wide receiver, just give Zach Wilson a big body target, just someone who can throw to. And that puts Washington on the clock here at pick number 11. Now, I don't really like the board either for Washington. And this is where we have another trade. The Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be the team trading up, and I think we all know who they're going to end up taking here. Pick number 20. Where are they here? Here they are. So they've been giving up pick 20 for pick 11, and next year's second round pick. We're just going to force this trade. Remember the Steelers traded up actually a few years ago. No, Denver traded up with the Steelers. Steelers were picked around 10 or so, or 20. And it was involving Noah Fant and Devin Bush, I believe. Let me check that. So it was between Noah Fant and I believe Devin Bush, as they did a trade around this spot. And now that Pittsburgh is in this position, I have them taking their future franchise quarterback in Malik Willis. Malik Willis is not my favorite quarterback in this year's class. It's probably Matt Corral. I just don't think he's as good as people are making him out to be. I still think that if he gets drafted to a place like Pittsburgh, he will have a pretty good success. And I think that the rumors are pointing towards Pittsburgh wanting to go all in for Malik Willis, as they're a quarterback away from competing. A lot of these teams are not in that position, but Pittsburgh is one of those teams where they are a good quarterback away from really almost being in Super Bowl contention. So now that Minnesota's picking here, the board is a little weird at this point. Let's see. They need interior offensive line. And I think this is a respectable spot to take one of these guys. I don't think Linderbaum is big enough. Yeah, I don't think he can play guard. That's right now their biggest need, and I think that's where they take Zion Johnson. Linderbaum is a weird prospect in that way. I think he can only play center. You can't really move him around. So I have him going with Zion Johnson. They're committed to Kirk Cousins. That is a difficult decision for a franchise to make if you want to commit to a quarterback like him, who's average to above average, never going to be a star, and just put as many pieces as you can around him. Not many choices for Minnesota. And now the Houston Texans are on the clock. That's right. And this is the pick from the Deshaun Watson trade. And I have him taking a wide receiver here, and that is Jameson Williams out of Alabama. Now, they have taken Evan Neal out of Alabama, and now they take Jameson Williams, just trying to get high character people. Just want core players who can be a part of your foundation for turning it around. Because Houston just needs to start over. Because the Deshaun Watson, Bill O'Brien era, that's a thing of the past. Just need to start over with Lovie Smith. Now Baltimore's picking, and I have them taking Trent McDuffie. They need a cornerback, probably the best one on the board at this point. And this is when probably the most uh, interesting, debatable pick in this draft that I make is Seattle taking Desmond Ritter. Now, I don't think Ritter is the best quarterback here, but I just think he fits the best for Seattle, what we're going to want to do. Kenny Pickett's a weird player to mock. Matt Corral is probably not going to be going this early. Desmond Ritter, I don't even know if he'll even be a first round player, prospect, but I have them taking him at 15. Need to take a quarterback if you're Seattle or get Baker Mayfield. Just need to address that position. Now, Philadelphia is on the clock here, and they need edge, and I have them taking George Karlaftis. He's the best edge on the board, and looking at the position, other than, I believe, the edge out of Georgia. Yeah, other than Trayvon Walker, there's not too many guys I take for them here in that position. David Ojabo, he would have been probably taken by now if he didn't tear his Achilles. Jermaine Johnson, he can be someone who I see a team taking late in the first round as well. Now the Chargers on the clock. They did address their interior defensive line a decent amount in the offseason, but might as well just get as many people as you can in the room, as whatever was the issue last year, you can't have that happen again. They had a terrible run defense, and you got Khalil Mack, you have Joey Bosa. You just need as many guys on the defensive line as you can. This AFC West is going to be a difficult division to compete in, and you're the only team with a top like 25 first round pick. So have to make the most of that position. Now the Saints are on the board. I have them taking wide receiver, and it's going to be Chris Olave. Treylon Burks is falling a bit, but I just don't know. I feel like one of these wide receivers is going to end up falling no matter what. This is a weird draft class as it's probably one of the more talented ones we've had, but it is a very bottom heavy draft in the sense that you're going to want a lot of like third, fourth round picks, and picking at like 14, 15 is not the best spot to be picking in this year's draft. There are great prospects in the beginning, but once you get to the middle of the first round, it's a little rough out there. So now Philadelphia is at pick 19, and I have them trading back with the Green Bay Packers as the Packers are going to move up, and they're going to take the player I just mentioned in Trayvon Burks. Alright, trades accepted. And they probably wouldn't give up pick 92 to move up 3 spots, but that's beside the point. And they pick up Treylon Burks. Green Bay needs a wide receiver bad for Aaron Rodgers. They do not have any wide receiver who I think is close to Devontae Adams. Not that Treylon Burks can do that in his rookie year anyway, but just get Aaron Rodgers a few pieces to work around. Now, Washington is picking here at the 20th pick. They traded back with Pittsburgh, and I have them taking linebacker Devin Lloyd. And it's a weird draft for Washington. They have a few needs. They got Carson Wentz. You just don't know how everything's going to work out for them. It's a very unclear future for the Washington football team, or the Washington Commanders as they are now. Now, the New England Patriots are picking here. They would have obviously liked to get a wide receiver, just not one who I would take at this spot, honestly. So I have them taking a cornerback, Andrew Booth here out of Clemson. Need to address the secondary, as they did let J.C. Jackson walk. They got rid of Gilmore, so they just need to address the position. Now the Eagles are here, and I have them taking Trayvon Walker edge. Now, they already have a couple of good edge pieces, but I just think that the way Philadelphia likes to run things, they need as many great edge pieces as they can get. I know some people are going to disagree from taking Trayvon Walker as well as Karlaftis, as they re-signed Barnett, they got Reddick, but Philadelphia can work a rotation here, and you don't know if Hassan Reddick or Barnett are really your long-term answers here, and I think that Karlaftis and Walker could be a great edge rush duo for the future. Now, the Arizona Cardinals here, who have probably had one of the worst off seasons, if I'm being honest, don't really know if they're doing the right moves. They're not really making too many moves, if we're being honest. They've lost a few key players in Chandler Jones. They lost, what was his name? They lost Christian Kirk. Yeah, Christian Kirk, Chandler Jones. So we're just not doing the best in terms of pleasing Kyler. Kyler had a few issues this offseason, and he doesn't seem too happy in Arizona. But I have him taking Devontae White here, just improving that interior defensive line. And that's a player that the Cowboys were definitely looking at here. Now, Dallas did release Lyle Collins, which is a very interesting move. I personally disagree with it. Tackle is a very valuable position, even if he is a right tackle. And moving on from someone to save the amount of money they did, I know they were in some cap issues, but it just didn't seem like the best move. Lyle Collins was probably worth his contract anyway. So, just a rough move for Dallas. And I have him taking Trevor Penning to replace the loss of Lyle Collins. Now that Buffalo's on the board, I have him taking cornerback Roger McCreary out of Auburn. As Buffalo really does not have a lot of needs here. They can take best player available or just a player they have a lot of faith in who can develop and just really be a key piece in their defense. Now that Tennessee is on the board, I'm gonna have them taking in another offensive lineman, not another interior offensive lineman. Another interior offensive lineman is finally gonna be taken in Kenyon Green. And the Titans are a weird team. Some people have had them taking Matt Corral or Kenny Pickett here, but I just don't know if that's what the Titans want to do this year. Maybe run it back with uh, Ryan Tannehill for one more year and just see what happens, because it's just a weird spot for them. They're almost a middle of a pack team in the AFC if you think about it. Probably one of the better teams in their division, but I'm not sure if I would take them over Indianapolis at this point. Now that Tampa Bay is on the clock, I have them taking another edge rusher, and last year they took Joe Tryon. This year I have them taking Jermaine Johnson. Now, he is obviously not a better prospect than Ojabo, but I just don't think that Tampa Bay is going to take someone who isn't going to really play next year. It's Tom Brady's last year. Just get the best you can. Not his last year, but it could be his last year. Don't really know at this point. And Green Bay is on the clock. Let's see, who should we end up taking? There's a few players here. Maybe double dip at wide receiver with George Pickens. Yeah, let's do that. Green Bay needs wide receiver bad, and if they take wide receiver with those 2 first-round picks they have, that honestly would not be a bad thing. Let me know what you guys think, Green Bay fans. But they don't have too many needs other than wide receiver. Now Kansas has back-to-back first-round picks. This is where I think Ojabo's slide ends, and Kansas is the team that can really afford to take an elite prospect, but he's hurt, and maybe he ends up becoming a great player for Kansas City. They need edge, and Frank Clark is still on the team for next year, I believe. So after this season, maybe you can cut ties with him for Ojabo. That would be something I think Kansas fans would look forward to. Have them taking Khair Alam out of Florida. Just addressing that secondary. Now the Cincinnati Bengals are on the board, are on the clock, and if you look at the board, they really just have one player who's just sitting there ready for them to just snag up, and that's Tyler Linderbaum. They need a center at this point, and he's one of the best center prospects in recent years. Probably not as good as maybe a Garrett Bradbury was, but he's still up there, and he's the first center taken in the draft. Now the Detroit Lions are on the clock, and this is the last first round pick. And looking at the board here, there could be taking in a Kobe Dean, maybe a Sky Moore, but I have them going quarterback here, and I have them taking Matt Corral, who I think has potential to be the best quarterback in this draft class. I don't like Kenny Pickett to Detroit. I just think Matt Corral's tools and everything he has can be better used here. So that was my first round in the Mock Draft 1.0 for me. Now, I'm not going to be doing a second round, but let me know what your guys' thoughts were on this draft, what picks you agreed and disagreed with, and let me know if you enjoyed the video.